Welcome to the Broadside Podcast.
With host, my dad, Andy Elliott.
All right, welcome back to the Broadside Podcast. I'm Andy Elliott, and today, Mike Herz, Gary Strassburg, Mandy Carlstrom, and myself were joined by Kelly Susewind, the director of the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. We had a handful of questions for Kelly, anywhere ranging from predator management to Forest Service land management to R3 programs and outreach incentives and stuff that they offer here in Washington at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's a great conversation. It's very informative. I encourage any hunter, outdoorsman, hiker, anybody that loves the wilderness and the woods to give it a listen. Also, if you find me on YouTube, Instagram, have any questions or any ideas and anything else you want to hear, let me know. We're out here reaching out to anyone we can find who wants to talk about what it means to them to hunt and fish here in Washington State, and also just be outdoors. So feel free to reach out, and thank you for your time, and enjoy the show. All right, well, so kind of the same thing as every other time for those that have been here. Kelly, we can just kind of usually start off and have some introductions. So I'll start with Mike. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Mike Herz. Reside down here in Southwest Washington. Lifetime resident of Washington. Been hunting in Washington for the past 30-some years. Got two adult boys who are contributing members of society and love to hunt and fish. And just became a grandfather here in December. And I am looking forward to getting my granddaughter involved in hunting and fishing too.
All right, thanks, Mike. Mandy, if you want to give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, my name's Mandy Carlstrom. I live over in Kitsap County. I've been in Washington my whole life. I'm an adult onset hunter. I've only been in this for the past, this will be the 4th season that I've started, but I've always been fishing. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and learn a little bit more from you.
Thanks, Mandy. Kelly, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm Kelly Susewind. I'm the director for Fish and Wildlife here in Washington State. Been at that now 5 years. I grew up in Washington. I hate to say it, but my parents were out of state when I was born. I was actually born in Salt Lake, Utah, but I was back before I was 6 months, so I can't actually claim born and raised. But starting at before 6 months, I've been here and been hunting since. I don't even know how to even say when you started, because my dad let me tag along behind him graciously, without a weapon, mostly making all kinds of noise and whining and crying and scaring stuff off. And then it eventually transitioned into I got to carry a firearm and started hunting. And so that's been 50 plus years ago that started. So truly my passion.
Awesome. Gary, go ahead and give us an introduction.
Yeah, thanks for coming on with us today, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Gary Strassburg. I live up in Island County. I was born and raised down in Puyallup by Mount Rainier in a small town called Orting. The Navy, I joined the Navy, and then 20 years later, I ended up on Whidbey Island, which that's where I still live. But I'm sitting here over in Wilbur, Washington, near Lake Roosevelt on vacation with the family. The kids and the grandkids and the wife are down fishing or swimming in the water. And I'm up here with you guys. So anyway, lifelong hunter, 40 plus years. Same thing, Kelly. I did the same thing. I tagged along with my dad doing nothing but make noise. And but it got me started. And that's been my passion ever since as well.
All right. So I'm Andy Elliott. I'm the host of the Broadside Podcast, small-time FFL dealer here in Central Washington, Yakima to be exact. And like you guys, I started out following my dad around, tromping through the snow, making a bunch of noise, sometimes wearing Ziploc bags around my socks to keep my feet dry. Later on, I kind of didn't do a lot of big game stuff. And in my younger years, I did a whole lot of waterfowl hunting. And then spent most of my 20s traveling the rodeo circuit. So now I'm full-fledged diving into, mostly backcountry big game hunting. That's kind of filled the void of the adrenaline rush that I lost when I quit riding bulls. But I do want to say thanks for coming on, Kelly, and I appreciate your time. So I think, Gary, if you want to go ahead and start us off, or if you want Mike to, or whoever.
I can, yeah, sure. I mean, I just had a couple of quick questions for you. I mean, one, I've been around, this game for a long time, and I've been through a lot of WDFW directors, and I haven't been this happy to have a director like yourself in a long time. That being said, I just wanted to ask. It's kind of I guess it's more of it's not really a personal question, but in a way, when you see and monitor the wildlife trends, just as most serious hunters do in this state, like us, just because you're the director, but also as a sportsman. How does your hunting experience here in Washington affect your daily operations as the director, and what are some of the positives you see for our wildlife going on into the future?
Well, my experience as a hunter shapes everything I do in this job, frankly. And I think that's the thing I bring, maybe a little different than some previous directors, is that passion. I've always had a passion for natural resources in general, but it all started with hunting. Hunting is what drove me. I was I didn't really know if there's anything else good in life besides hunting when I was a little kid. That's all I wanted to do all the time. And that leads you into, well, what kind of a job can you do? And frankly, I started off more in just general natural resources. But when this job came open, I thought, well, I really do want to preserve that future for the hunting opportunity, hunting heritage in the state. And wow, you get to work with Fish and Wildlife every day. So that led me to the job. And then in the job, it's been a little different than I anticipated, for sure.
I bet.
We've got some challenges we can predict, and I knew about. We've got the second highest population of any Western state, and we've got the smallest land footprint of any state, and we're growing that population at remarkable rates, and we're not growing that land base at all. And so we just have a whole different challenge here, I think, than other states. When I talk with other directors, and I start looking at the number of hunters they have per animal and their success rates, I think, boy, we can't afford that in Washington. If we had that kind of success rate, we wouldn't have anything left because we have so many hunters, which is great. We need them out on the ground. But first and foremost, I think, and this is one of the controversies we have going, as you all know right now with our commission, is conservation. And I think every genuine hunter I know has conservation first. You don't have hunting if you don't have conservation first. It's that simple. So we put conservation first. We want to make sure those populations are sustainable and on the landscape. We want those grandkids to be going after them.
Absolutely.
I heard all the stories about being a grandparent and thought, yeah, it's going to be cool, but it can't be all that great. Well, I was wrong. It is all that great. It's the coolest thing in the world. And I just can't wait to be standing there when one of those kids, one boy and one girl, are standing over their first big game animal. So I think about that in every decision we make, is how do we make sure that happens? We preserve that culture, but first and foremost, we have to preserve those animals in tough times with our big population, small land base, and habitat changing, climate changing. It's going to be a handful, and that's why kind of my shtick since I've been here is we need everybody on board and everybody pulling in the same direction, and that's what we'll need to succeed. And that's for everybody that hunts and doesn't hunt. Fish and wildlife are, I think, what set us apart in this state. We've got an incredible opportunity here. Every single citizen benefits from fish and wildlife, whether they know it or not. Sorry, I'm getting off on kind of my own personal emotional side here. But before I came to this job, I was at a meeting with a bunch of folks working on a technical issue, a computer IT issue, and so these are your typical IT geeks, which I love. But a bald eagle flew right by the window and lit in a tree, and the meeting just stopped. And everybody was at the window. And that's what Fish and Wildlife do to people. And that's why it's so important that we preserve that for everybody.
Absolutely.
So on that note, for conservation, what if you can tell us about some of the projects for conservation that the department is doing the remainder of this year, and maybe what role the public plays in those projects? How can people get involved to make the most of those?
Well, I'll get involved first. Reach out. On our website, you can find our regional directors. I always say that's a good starting point for anything to do with the agency. That's the face of the director's office in the regions. we're working hard. We've got volunteer programs. We've got more structured programs, as you know, master hunters and hunter education. And we're really trying to grow that volunteer side of the house. So if you're interested in helping, we love volunteer help. One, because it's volunteer and we can afford some of that, and because it gets people excited, and that's what we really need, is people excited about being out there. Oh man, and examples, it could go on forever, but some of the examples we've got are, well, we work with a lot of organizations: Rocky Mountain Elk, Mule Deer Foundation, Ducks Unlimited. I shouldn't start naming them because can't possibly name them all. But some of the issues or some of the things we've got going on are our acquisitions. We did a big acquisition here in Thurston County for the pocket gopher and Taylor's checker spot. We work with Joint Base Lewis McChord. People probably don't realize it, but that's the last big chunk of intact prairie that we have here on the west side. And we've got a great relationship going with JBLM. So it's critical to us because of the habitat it offers. It's also a training ground for them. So they have some pretty high expectations of what's going on out there as well. It's been a 20+ year project, and we work with them along with U.S. Fish and Wildlife to help them manage that area. You probably heard about our Shrub Step initiative last year. So it really started after the fires, and that's a collaborative with the State Conservation Commission, the local CDs, tribes, Conservation Northwest, Audubon, Cattlemen, Land Trust, everything else to really make that landscape more resilient and come back after that fire. So that's a huge one, big investment. Those are the things that really help us too. You go to the legislature with that, and of course, I won't say easy, but they want to fund something like that to the extent they can, and bringing partners in makes them confident that they're going to satisfy all their constituents, which is, obviously on them to do. We've got a great program going on with fishers. We've got some videos out. Hopefully you've seen recovering fishers, releasing fishers, working with the Forest Protection Agency on that. So we come up with this candidate conservation agreement. It's basically an agreement that they will do a little more than they really have to. And in exchange for that, we agree that that's what really should be done. And should they be listed, you've done your part. So it works both ways. That's put over 1 million acres into work for us. There's some acquisition on the east side in the with the Colvilles, putting around the Sinlahican area. Great for migratory areas for mule deer. Shrub steppe obligates are there, and of course steelhead and salmon. The Methow Valley, we've got a great opportunity going on there. We've got several in the last decades, but 380 acres of Methow Valley. Same thing, foraging habitat for wolves, migration for wolves, all our predators, wolves, coyotes, lynx, bobcat, also the deer that they prey on. Again, that full ecosystem support that supports all the species. That's the thing that frankly frustrates me a little bit when people we're about single species. Mandatory that you pay attention to single species. We have licenses and hunting regulations around single species, but very little we do is really single species focused. Even if it is focused, the way to help that species is help the habitat and help everything that supports that species, which is all the other species that depend on that species and that species depends on. So, boy, we could go on and on. I think I will stop there. And quite frankly, if we wanted to, we could just dedicate a show to that, and I'd get the folks that are way more excited even than me and know all the details to come and give you some more detail and probably have a better avenue too on just exactly how best we could use help from folks. But we're always looking for help.
That's awesome. Gosh, so much stuff in the pipeline going on. And yeah, that'd be great. We can figure out how to get more folks engaged and really get it, get the most impact for all that.
I think most people would be absolutely astounded. I am every day. I'm supposed to be on top of stuff, and I think I am. And then it's like, wow, we're doing that too. I didn't know about that. Tell me more. And that leads to 2 or 3. Well, we got these other ones sort of like that. It's just the breadth is almost impossible to get your arms around, which is, of course, a wonderful thing.
probably a pretty cool environment too, to be out working on those projects, and you get the folks out there on the landscape talking and working and sharing stories. So it's probably just rewarding from start to finish for the folks who do get engaged.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's a little missing for me because I spend way too much time in the office, and I get out there, and that's another thing I would say. And I mentioned this at the commission meeting over the weekend. We tend to have these tension-filled issues that come up, and we see each other kind of at our worst. You get out there in a field where we're collaborating with folks, and it's an entirely different world, and that's the world we need to create. That's where, how can we help each other? Hey, we don't have to agree on everything, except we agree that this is important, and it's important that we maintain this habitat and these species, and then it just builds on itself. So yeah, I wish I got more time out there, but I've committed to myself that I will, because every time I do, that's where you get the fuel to keep going.
Definitely.
Yeah, so interject here. I've actually signed up recently for Master Hunters, and I've helped out with hunters education classes to become certified as a hunter ed instructor out here. They run one at Sun Valley Shooting Targets in Moxie, and it's pretty fun. It's a lot. It's a good time to go out and watch those kids learn to safely handle firearms, identify different actions, all sorts of that stuff that a lot of people grew up learning. You kind of take for granted that we just kind of know it. But with that being said, is there any types of educational programs or outreach events that the department offers?
Well, we're trying to get involved with all kinds of events. So one of the things we've really done over the last few years is we're growing call it our CAPE program, Communications and Public Engagement. It's one of those areas where when times are tight, you tend to cut, and it really should be the last place you cut, because it's your tagline to the population. But it's not that day-to-day necessary work. It's necessary in the long run, though. So we're trying to rebuild that, and we put tremendous investment in that group. Nate Pamplin's running that. They tend to be young folks coming in. They like the social media. They like the communication side of things, and they're absolutely have an infectious spirit. You go in that room and you better have some energy, because they're going to use it up. So we're attending all kinds of. I think we've attended 60 events in the last. I can't even say since when. Brand new to us to be doing stuff like that, and one not brand new, but at this scale, it's brand new. And they're different folks too. We're getting out and dealing with not just our traditional folks, but we're getting to all kinds of events, the Urban League type of things, and bird shows and everything else, so that people can understand that. And this is I always give great kudos to our Budget and Policy Advisory Group, affectionately known as BPAG. We created that group when we were really suffering on budget a few years ago. We hadn't really, when I started in 2018, we hadn't recovered from the recession of 2008, 2009. We had been flat or down. And we tried a couple different things to change that to no success. One of the things we did was build this BPAG, Budget and Policy Advisory Group, intentionally bringing people from all different backgrounds, the people who normally sit across the table yelling at each other, or at least wagging fingers at each other because they have different opinions on how we should go, and really run them through the ringer on our budget process, where we've been, where we want to go, what they want to see, what we accomplish, what we get for our dollar. And they came out with this incredibly powerful, unified group where even when they disagree individually, they agree again, sort of where we started, that what we really need is quality fish and wildlife populations. And one of the main things we need for that is a healthy department. You might not like everything the department does, but a healthy, strong, supported department is what will serve us all the best. And so with that group, and one of the things we needed to do was get out beyond our traditional folks. We've got, like I said, the Tacoma Urban League, Outdoor Asian, Innovative Change Makers, those kinds of groups we've been out to see. And then, of course, then we go to all of our, hopefully you see us at our sportsman shows. And those are some tough duty for stuff, because people come up wanting to know why the seasons aren't longer, the bag limits aren't higher, or they can't keep this fish instead of that fish. And boy, our staff just lean in and really are there to engage. We want people to know what we do, and we want people to have that free access to criticize as well. That's how we learn and grow. So lots of events. We keep up a webpage that tells you about upcoming events. Encourage you to go to that. And again, if you're looking for stuff in your particular area, hit up our regional director. They're going to love it. I sent so many people to them, but that's the job. Always can start there, and they can funnel you to the right folks locally. Feel like I'm blasting through this stuff, but there's so much to say. And
No, you're fine.
Okay, Kelly. Trust me. Yeah, no, it's not falling on deaf ears. Trust me.
Yeah, you've answered. I think you've answered a couple of my questions just listening to you, so that's great. I don't know if Mike, you haven't had any time to speak. I don't know if you want to wake up over there or whatever.
This one's going to be a little long-winded. I've got to set the stage. So when I first started hunting, we used to hunt a lot of U.S. Forest Service land, and grew up hunting big timber bucks. There was a good mix of clear cuts and reprod. There's lots of feed, lots of cover, and back then we could still hunt with cougars with dogs and bait and all that. Well, that has nothing to do with the area I used to hunt, where now the canopy has enclosed and the feed and forage isn't there, the deer numbers, and now there's like hardly any elk there now. And I know a great percentage of it has to do with the lack of food forage in the U.S. Forest Service. And this leads me to my next observation. There's a podcast that I've listened to. It's the Hunt Talk podcast with Randy Newberg, and he had a gentleman on there from Northwest Montana, and they have a program that they're implementing up there where it's in cooperation with Montana Fish and Parks and U.S. Forest Service to help manage the forest to better help with the wildlife population, so that because up in Northwest Montana, there is no quote unquote standard wintering range, where like in central Montana, they come down out of the high country and they are down in the lowland during winter. But in Northwest Montana, that canopy closes in. There's no food forage for the winter because there's no place for those guys to go. Is there any kind of program? Is there any kind of direction we can go with U.S. Forest Service to help alleviate some of that problems? And in Washington, like you said, we have very limited land mass for people to go hunting that's, not private timberland. And if there was some place where we could start opening up more of the U.S. Forest Service in some kind of co-op with Fish and Wildlife, that would alleviate some of the pressure on some of the other lands. I don't know if that's an option, if that's something that can be looked at, or do you have any insight on that?
I don't know about insight, but I can give you some answers on I think what you're talking about. I'd be interested in knowing what the name of that was, because I think we've got something very similar. So I'll describe what we have, and yeah, if you see stuff working elsewhere that you think might work here, always bring it to us. That's what we're here for. You're right. In Washington, we got about half our land's public, half's private, which is tremendous. If you're an East Coast state, you think that sounds wonderful, but if you're a West Coast state, that's not all that much in public. So, but of that public land, the U.S. Forest Service has about 8 million acres in Washington. And of course, there's some of those acres that provide that key to habitat, and it's important acreage to us. So we've been working with them for a long time. It's a pretty good collaborative relationship, but especially since I think it was 2019, it's about 4 years ago, we entered into a shared stewardship agreement with U.S. Forest Service that allows us to work with them a little bit more directly. One element or one branch of that is called the Good Neighbor Authority, and it gives us authority to work with them more directly and on their land. We can work on habitat projects, we can work on pre-commercial thinning, commercial thinning, work on some forest health issues, which obviously it's not the work I'm aware of, and I might not be aware of all of it, is not dedicated strictly to creating habitat. But if you're working on forest resiliency and you go in and do forest treatments, you're helping it. You're going into those overstock stands and you're getting rid of some of those conditions you're talking about. We're working on that daily with them. We're doing a little bit of shuffling internally on folks, and the person that was leading that dynamite person so good that I promoted him to a different job. So that's the curse of having good people. We need to get that refilled, but we've also agreed just recently that we're going to add capacity there. He had done a good job of getting the groundwork done with U.S. Forests. That Good Neighbor Agreement extends the DNR as well, so that we can all three agencies be working together. And we'll be adding a couple of FTEs to that. And they will be more focused directly at getting on the ground projects up and running, so that when we find a good project, we've got the staff. And it's not, oh, gee, all three agencies think this is a good idea, but none of us have staff to work on it. We're going to have dedicated staff to actually make those come through. So I think it addresses exactly what you're after. Could we extend that to strictly habitat? I think we could, because habitat restoration is one of the eligible things. We just got to find the right project and then get funding. And right now, Forest Service, I can't speak to their funding, but federal funding as a whole is pretty flush right now. It's a good time to be looking for federal dollars on most things. So either through Forest Service, through Roylene at the NRCS, Farm Bills, the biggest game in town for money, and a lot of that goes to restoration and habitat protection. So we're trying to work close with those folks. And I think any federal partner would be good. And U.S. Forest Service is one in particular where we're putting dedicated energy towards.
Awesome. I'll do a little research for you, and I'll send you that the link that they're using for this project over in Montana. Maybe help get a little direction in what they're doing.
Yep, I will look forward to that. And then if you want to talk to somebody that knows a lot more detail than I do, Mike Cuttle Jr., he's our new Region 1 director. He was our shared stewardship coordinator, and he's a wealth of information on this stuff.
Sweet. Appreciate that.
This might be a loaded question.
No.
But I've been, again, being in the woods as much as I have in the last 45 years, not really straying away too much from common areas that I've hunted since I was little. And as far as predators go, I can remember seeing bears. I never saw a mountain lion as a kid in the wild. Saw bears, but I don't know if it's just me or just because of the climate we are in right now, but I know I see more bears now than I have in the last 25 years. As a matter of fact, where I'm sitting right now in Wilbur, Washington, our next door neighbor, 3 weeks ago, we had a cougar kill under their porch. I mean, that's how many cats are here, and there weren't cats here. So I'm just curious, comments on predator management and maybe where you see it headed.
Well, we hear reports a lot of seeing more predators than we used to, and that includes me and the friends I grew up with. I saw 3 cougars in my lifetime growing up here on the west side, and that included one that flashed across the road, but I counted it because I saw it. But it wasn't exactly a great experience. And now I've got guys that are seeing that many in a year out hunting. Now, is it coincidence? Are we just seeing them more? Are they hunting areas? Is it trail cam? There's all kinds of potential answers. We have to put some energy into how we're going to manage predators. And we manage them basically like any other species. We want to make sure that there's enough of them on the landscape. We've got a definite interest from our commission on what predator hunting should look like. They've asked for some information on what's the predator role in the ecosystem, and how do we know that our management approach is protecting the ecosystem function of those predators. I'm confident, everything can be open for tweaks, but what I found with this agency is the deeper you dig, the more there's been a lot of thought given to where we are. And we've been managing predators and game for 80 years, and it's going pretty well. There's always room for improvement, and there's always room to meet different demands or needs. But so I'd say the long answer is I don't really know. The commission has been pretty clear as we go through our game management plan, right, that they want to have a very specific policy around predator management, and so that's the direction we'll go, and we'll see where that leads. I don't know. I can't prejudge the outcome, other than to say I'm pretty confident that what we're doing, it's certainly not too much. I'll put it that way as far as hunting predators. I'm seeing, I don't get out hardly enough anymore, but I see bears a lot. but I was blessed growing up in Grays Harbor. We had bears, always had lots of bears. So,
There's always been
so
bears
kind of
there.
use that. The cats are a little different. We're seeing more of those.
And if we've got time for another question, love to dig in a little bit more to like so I'm big on trying to control what you can control and provide information where we can. So in terms of providing information from what we're seeing out in the field, what can hunters do to better drive reporting, whether that's hunter reporting data, to be given and to be utilized to have a better understanding of those species that are in question?
Well, I would say the first thing we can do is encourage hunters to do the reporting. And so I get sometimes kind of a unique view into that because some of my old curmudgeon friends act like a lot of our hunters, and they don't want to turn in their reports, and they're worried it'll be used against them. And that actually works backwards for us. We rely on that data, so there's data and there's science, and what we do with that data, of course, is the science. I won't get into a big monologue about that. But when we don't have data, we have to make cautionary adjustments to things. When we've got data, we can make them. Even if that data says, the adjustment might not be in the direction you like, it will be in the long run. That's how we preserve those species. And then just managing with our other entities, this I think more on the fishing side, but we sit down with tribes and they're like, hey, you're entitled to your share, but you need to demonstrate to us that you're actually only catching your share. And then we show them, well, we've got 30% of our people return catch record cards. So we have a science to build that into the full catch. It's not very compelling or convincing. So really getting those things turned in accurately. It's also easy to say, no, did not hunt, and just to avoid the $10 fee. I know people doing that too. That doesn't help us. So I hate to say trust because we got to build trust. You don't ask for trust, you earn trust. But hopefully you can put some trust into filling those things out completely and accurately is helpful to the agency, to our biologists, to help manage those species so that we can continue to provide that hunting. Also, some species it's mandatory reporting or sealing of pelts. That gives us a lot of information on what cats are we shooting? Are we shooting all youngs, or are we getting older cats? What are we dealing with? And how many for sure. And on the bear, of course, the question is lactating females. Well, if you come in with your seal, you can figure that out. Absent that information, I think it actually works against hunters. Nobody really knows. Well, then we're going to assume the worst. And then also stopping it, obviously, game check stations. We still have people that like to blow by those and tuck the orange under the seat, and that doesn't help us either because that we have volunteers there often and our staff there always. And the information you gain from a hunter who's just been out in the field, what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they like, what they don't like, that really does shape what goes back into those district offices. And the district offices are the one to put together the seasons for those areas. So really working with that. And of course, it's even more important that we're worried about our chronic wasting disease showing up. And, it's a matter of time, I think, not if, but when. And knowing that and where we can focus helps us as well. So we have sighting spots on our web for wolves and other things. If you're interested in doing those also help. My bottom line is engage with your local, particularly your local Fish and Wildlife folks. They're here to help. It's easy to get hung up in a lot of the politics that are going on that everybody hates from all angles. But the more we work together, especially at that local level, the more successful we'll all be. And the better face we can put on the hunting public, which is really what I think we need to do. I'll get on my little soapbox that, man, I can't believe where I'm at. If you'd said 40 years ago, I didn't want to talk about hunting. I want to be hunting. I didn't want to be sitting in a meeting. I want to be in the woods. And I think that most hunters are like that to some degree. So we haven't always told our story and told it well. And I think the absence of that story is not helping us now. So taking a little bit of the time, engaging with the agency and with the public and with your constituents that are out there, this is a great opportunity right here. That's what will make us successful in preserving this hunting heritage, way of life, culture, identity, pick your words.
Life. That's awesome. I appreciate that information. Hopefully, can have a couple people chiming in that weren't before for providing that information, if nothing else.
And if you feel like this is the other thing I've heard, hey, we just think it drops on fallen ears, falls on deaf ears, excuse me. Let us know that too, because that shouldn't be happening. I think it generally is not. We got a great staff, but if it is, tell us. Doesn't mean you get an answer you like, but you better get an answer. That's kind of my own standard.
So I got a few things. So just being involved in the last couple of years, I cannot believe the amount of, and I don't even work there. I cannot believe the amount of effort that your guys' staff, the biologists, all the information that people gather. It's just mind-boggling because there's people behind the scenes that are doing all this work out in the field. They compile all that information. They bring it to, their superiors. They bring it all together and they present it at these meetings. And I'm just like, it's just mind-boggling to me. I love it. And I super appreciate it. And I told a few people on here that I'm going to make it my mission. Every time I'm at one of these commission meetings, I'm thanking the staff and the biologists for all their hard work. It's much appreciated. I know a lot of it goes, the work goes unseen, but it's much appreciated. And one of the other things,
staff, and they're as passionate as you are. They're doing this work because it's their life as well. They dedicate their academic professional career. I'm jealous of them sometimes. You got to go out and count deer today or count sharp-tailed grouse, but they take it to heart, and it is their identity in their life. And I would say generally natural resource agencies have dedicated staffs, but Fish and Wildlife agencies in particular, this isn't just a job. This really is about what they believe in, and great to. So one, yes, thanks for the work and engage with them where you can. Sorry,
so I don't know if did you want to finish your thought, Mike? Or
yeah, and I don't know when you're going to release this podcast, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but I am I'm very pleased.
You're not drawing any tags anyway.
No.
Yeah.
Me neither. That makes you feel better.
No, I'm very pleased that the department has taken the direction on the leftover multi-season deer tags to the first come, first serve. I let out a big yahoo when I saw that email come through.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's an example of one of the areas where we need to hear from you all on what works. There's different ways of going about it, and there's easier ways for us administratively than other ways. But what does the public want? And then ultimately, we want to get into that fairness too. And on deer, we have a little more room. On the elk, it's so short that we had people, and maybe you're some of them, because some of my friends, where they drive for miles to find a little out of the way store where they could be first in line and have everything ready so that get theirs first. And still, if you were second in line, you weren't going to get a shot. And if you were first in line, you still didn't have very good odds. So it seemed just better to, stick with the original draw and run down the list for those. But for deer, we changed the approach. It's a little different demand. And that's an example of the kind of things that we need to hear from you, because I came in with some ideas about hunting, what things I'd like to see changed. And boy, I ran into a buzzsaw and said, you might want to go talk to some hunters about that, because I think you're the only one that thinks that way. And I was like, no, they all think this way. Yeah, turns out I was the only one. So we need your input to help us make those decisions. I hope you get this.
Yeah. So, and maybe this is a dumb question, but for early reporting on your hunts, is there some sort of an incentive for people to report their hunts early?
There is. There's a draw, and you don't have the specifics right in front of you, but if you submit I think it's like early, it's way before the deadline. But if you get them in early, all the people who met that threshold then go into a drawing. And the drawing, I'm not sure just exactly which drawing it is. Some of them could be pretty great drawings, like even raffle level type drawings. And so I get mine in every year. It hasn't worked yet, but I get mine in to make sure I get an opportunity.
Yeah. Gary, I don't know. I know we're missing one person who had a question they wanted to ask. I'm not sure if you want to touch on that, or
We
Kelly,
are,
if
if
we
you
have some
want,
time for one more question.
You bet.
all right. In regards to the R3 plan, several objectives to hit by the year 2030 departments striving for. Any input on how that's going? If you have any, any conversations with Commissioner Baker about it being about based on the comments she made at her confirmation hearing about, I'm sure you remember them. I can't say them off the top of my head, but it was, why do we need more hunters? I think is what the comment was. Some words to that effect. I'm not trying to put any words in her mouth, but the question was basically just wondering where the R3 program is going and how it's going.
So yeah, we are implementing that plan, and we're some of that CAPE work, that our communications and public engagement work is specifically directed because of the R3 plan. Get out to these new groups, get people interested, making sure that especially those underrepresented communities, the adult onset hunter. I love the adult onset hunter. See, that's a foreign concept to
Yeah,
me.
it's pretty cool.
Growing up, everybody had an opportunity to hunt in my little rural area. But that's not universal, and we get some of our most dedicated hunters are picking it up later. So getting out to those groups and making sure we're available and aware, and that is occurring. I won't go through all the different venues we've gone through on that. I will take the R3 question, kind of head on. I think Commissioner Baker, and she was talking beyond hunting. It was, she tried to shape it as too many people in our land. I think it's a little different version of my it's a little different version of we got a lot of people and not much land. And I have talked to her about it, and she's so far held that as her position. It's one of the areas that we're in completely disagreement on. I will say, as a hunter, I sometimes wish I was the only hunter in the state. And then for my job, that doesn't really work. And what we need is everybody out there wanting to be out there. That puts a real challenge on us to hunt. When you have more elk hunters than you have elk, you got to come up with some creative ways to make it work for folks. But the best thing is having an engaged community. And the best way to engage that community is have them out there and enjoying it. You all know how addictive it is. I don't even mean just hunting, even if you're just a bird watcher. We need you out on the ground and getting excited about bird watching and supporting an agency that does biodiversity and management of ecosystems, so we have birds to watch or trails to hike or rocks to climb, whatever your thing is. I want every citizen in the state to want to be out there, and then I want that oppressive challenge of how the hell are we going to manage that.
I get it.
But if we have that kind of enthusiasm and connection, we'll have to manage it. If we don't have that kind of connection and it becomes a museum piece, no one's going to support that. No one's going to continue to invest in that. And it just then slowly dies and goes away. So I believe in our R3 plan. I think it goes beyond hunting and angling. I think it has to. That's been my number one thing since I got here. I used to talk about we need to engage the other 6 million people who aren't buying hunting and fishing license. Well, now it's closer to 7 million. And so it's even more important. We need them to be enthusiastic. So those people driving down I-5 or seeing the eagle out the window realize they have a responsibility to help with this effort too, and they get a benefit from it. Then we have the hard work, but the clear work of just making it work instead of fighting whether we should be doing stuff or not. And so,
it's an all hands on deck type of deal for sure.
It is, and I'll let Commissioner Baker speak, and I think you guys talked to her as well, or
we did, yeah.
So I'll be quiet and let her words carry her ideas. I just I'll double down on R3 and I'll make it's not hunting and angling only. It's R3 for citizens of this state to value the wildlife and fish populations we have. And obviously,
I think that's because I think that's a big misnomer that hunters only care about game species. Since I hunt deer and elk and bear and cougar, that's all I care about. I don't care about nothing else. But man, when you're out in the woods with your kid, your grandkid, and you see a porcupine or a beaver or hell, even a rabbit, it's just cool to see things in the woods. And we don't want none of that to go away. We don't want wolves. I mean, it's one of the things where everything has a balance, but everything has to be managed too. And we understand that. I just really wish that there were more people understood that hunters aren't just a bunch of rednecks with guns. We're actually pretty passionate about more than just the game species we pursue.
You cut out a little bit on the end, but that would be my message leaving here is that's what we need and understandably so. For years that's all we needed to do, but we get hunter, we have these people showing up worried about the populations and assessments, and is the agency really doing the right thing? And then hunters would show up and be concerned that we added an archery tag and didn't add a muzzleloader tag, or vice versa, not to pick on any group, but it was the allocation split, and that's what we heard from folks about. And I think the reason for that is everybody else, it's just known, it's inherent that's an interest and a priority for me, because I already assume all those other investments in conservation, the full ecosystem, not just the species I'm hunting. But people don't necessarily know that, and I think that's one of the things we've done a disservice, and I'm part of that, to ourselves as hunters, is not telling that story, so they can see that that they are conservationists first and foremost, and then whether they ever actually believe me when I say, and you'll never have a closer connection with the outdoors than the hunter will. You just can't. That defines that connection for me. It doesn't have to for everybody, but it does for hunters, and that doesn't mean they're not conservationists. It means just the opposite. Speaking of the choir here.
Mandy, I saw you were unmuted. Did you have another question you wanted to ask, or?
No, I'm just 100% agreement in that, full circle from needing to have that healthy ecosystem and putting the work in to benefit all the species, so people can go out there and enjoy it how you want. Earlier said that I'm an onset hunter, so I grew up in the outdoors, and I had deer in the backyard. I got to go and watch all those things, and then getting involved into the other aspects of hunting just deepen those connections to, levels that I didn't think were possible. 4 years ago, I never would have thought that I'd be here, speaking to these people in this meeting. But it's like when you get out and you get to enjoy the things and you get to find what your passions are, you're going to fight for it. And so that means fighting for the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. All right. If anybody else, if there's anything else anybody wants to get out there, or questions or anything, I think you've answered everything I wanted to know. So,
yeah.
Well,
I agree.
Appreciate the time. Hope I didn't ramble too much. If you need more time, just call. We'll make sure we're doing it. We're going to do our part. I know. I think, Mike, you were at the commission meeting. Mandy, I know you testified. That's what we need from folks is letting people know who we are and what we do, and that we are about the same things anybody that wants conservation is. So thanks for the opportunity to come on and talk to you all. And it's been refreshing, actually. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I know your time's valuable, and it was when you answered my email, Bill, your assistant did, but either way said that you had agreed to do this. I was like, oh, heck yeah. I've been really wanting to talk to you.
I appreciate that. I'm telling our staff, get out there and interact with people. I better do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to echo that too. Sorry, was that Mike?
Yep. Sorry. No, I was just saying much appreciated. And you probably get sick of me because I ain't going away.
Yeah.
That'll be our goal.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to say thanks for coming on. Hopefully, I'm down here in Yakima, and I know you guys' next meeting's down here, so I'm hoping to be there in person and say hi. But thank you for your time, and thank you guys for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, Andy.
All right, you guys have a good night.